You feel it every January, a burst of certainty, a list written with conviction, and then a few weeks later a hollow chest and shame you can't shake. That shame is not simply disappointment or lack of willpower. It's the sign of a real, physical loss. When you promise a future version of yourself something you don't have the energy to deliver, you open a channel that drains your clarity, your joy, and your life force. Jesus warned against this exact move. Make a vow into the future, and you've just signed away a piece of yourself. This isn't a poetic metaphor pulled out of thin air. It comes from sources that were deliberately hidden, fragments from the Gospel of Thomas, the Nag Hammadi Cache, even the sharper edges of Matthew, and the letters of the early teachers. Those older teachers knew how speech operates inside the fabric of lived reality, and those lessons were softened or removed as institutions took control. That erasure matters to you because the ignorance is strategic. If you don't know words can bind you, you'll keep signing invisible debts you never agreed to. The core truth is blunt and practical. Certain declarations function like contracts. Saying "I will" sets an empty container in the ether that demands filling. Fail to fill it, and the emotional residue, guilt, self-blame, anxiety, becomes the fuel that other forces use. But there's a different mechanic available, and it's not mystical fluff. Change the syntax of your speech. Use the present form authority of "I am." Keep the intent sealed in disciplined silence, and consciously revoke old promises that still leak your power. Seen this way, your broken resolutions stop being personal failures and reveal themselves as predictable traps with clear counters. Don't let another year pass with your power being siphoned. The moment you understand how words build cages, you get to cut them apart on purpose. First, you must learn how language actually shapes reality and which phrases act like handcuffs. Because once you see the wiring, you can choose what to speak and what to bury in silence. You often enter a new year carrying intentions like armor, believing discipline will protect you, yet something deeper tugs at your vital breath. Those well-meant resolutions are not just promises. They can act as etheric contracts that attract parasitic pressure and interference. When commitments are made under fear or guilt, a subtle tether attaches to your vessel and siphons energy across days and months. Understanding this is not mystical fluff. It is a practical recognition of how your frequency shield can be compromised by unexamined vows. Ancient Gnostic protocols taught that before any outward effort, the monadic anchor must be clear and sovereign. Otherwise, promises become conduits rather than commitments. Your vital breath is the current that animates intention, and when a vow is bound to fear, it converts into a recurring interference. Picture making a rigid promise to change overnight. The pledge becomes a loop that calls back judgment and guilt whenever perceived failure occurs. That returning charge is what weakens your vessel, not the honest struggle to grow. Before making any new vow, examine the root of your intention with a practical test rooted in the monadic anchor. Breathe into your vital breath, slow the surge until clarity rises, and ask whether this promise increases sovereignty or invites parasitic pressure. If the commitment tightens your chest or spins an inner loop of must and should, it is misaligned. A proper practice is to frame intentions as flexible agreements with yourself, spoken aloud while anchored. Then watch how your frequency shield responds over several days. Renegotiation is the corrective act that severs tethers without violence. With clear breath and anchored attention, declare release statements that return obligation to its source. For example, say aloud, "By monadic anchor, this pledge is released and returned," and feel for the loosening at the center of your vessel. Follow with a simple physical marker, untying a cord, setting a paper alight, or removing a ring as a boundary enactment. Expect a rebound of parasitic pressure. Persistence in the frequency shield will diminish it. Guilt and self-reproach are often the echo of contracted energy, not proof of moral failure. When reproach surfaces, treat it as an interference signal. Trace its origin. Did the promise come from coercion, social image, or a true monadic desire? If origin is external, convert guilt into an instruction to renegotiate. Break big vows into experiments that preserve sovereignty and test resonance. Short cycles, clear endpoints, and checkpoints for verifying whether the pledge feeds or drains your vital breath. Celebrate small alignments as reinforcement of the frequency shield. Relationships amplify vows, so choose interlocutors who honor monadic anchors and do not feed parasitic pressure. When sharing intentions, present them as contingent agreements rather than demands. This invites honest feedback without creating obligation-based drains. Establish clear boundaries. Say what support looks like and what judgment will do to your vital breath. If someone mirrors back guilt or pressure, treat that as an external interference and limit exposure until the frequency shield is restored. Protecting sovereignty is an everyday discipline, not occasional theater. Changing perspective frees the vessel from long-held drains and restores a stronger current to daily life. Make a short daily check. Align the monadic anchor, tune the frequency shield, breathe into purpose, and scan for parasitic pressure. When a vow begins to constrict, apply renegotiation rituals and physical boundary acts until the tether loosens. Keep promises that expand sovereignty and release those that do not. With steady attention and clear protocols, the cycle of guilt, failure, and energy loss can be replaced with measured growth and reclaimed vital breath. When a vow begins to constrict your vessel, remember the ancient warning that Jesus offered about promises. Words form energetic agreements that reach beyond intention. You must treat any pledge as an active contract that can either fortify sovereignty or become a tether of parasitic pressure. Before enacting a new commitment, bring attention to the monadic anchor and breathe into the vital breath until clarity arrives. That simple pause determines whether the future obligation will feed life or impose recurring interference. Promises made under fear or obligation accumulate as debts on the vessel, and their non-fulfillment sends returning charge that frays the frequency shield. You feel this as tightening in the chest, replaying guilt, or an internal loop that erodes sovereignty. Use a practical test. Breathe slowly into the monadic anchor and ask whether the pledge increases the current of your vital breath or constricts it. If constriction occurs, the promise is an interference, not a commitment worth carrying. Follow a clear protocol to disentangle it. When release is required, perform a clear renegotiation that honors sovereignty rather than punishes failure. Anchor attention in the monadic center. Breathe into the vital breath until the body loosens. Then speak a release aloud that returns obligation to its source. Follow the declaration with a physical boundary act, untying a cord, folding and placing a note away, or removing a ring as a tactile confirmation for the vessel. Expect an initial rebound of parasitic pressure. Persistence in frequency shield practices will quickly diminish that returning interference. Jesus' warning points to the simple fact that words carry energetic weight. Uttered promises are seeds of obligation that grow into debts when neglected. Those debts show up as chronic interference within the vessel and as depletion of vital breath and sovereignty over time. Make commitments like experiments. Short cycles with clear endpoints and checkpoints to verify whether the pledge strengthens the frequency shield. Celebrate small alignments as reinforcement. Each observed success rewrites the contract dynamic and reduces the chance that a promise becomes parasitic pressure. Relationships magnify the force of any agreement, and shared vows can either shore up sovereignty or feed parasitic pressure. Choose people who respect the monadic anchor and frame requests for support as contingent agreements, not demands. State clearly what support looks like and what judgment does to the vessel. If someone mirrors back guilt or coercion, recognize that as external interference and restrict exposure until the frequency shield is strong. Use simple scripts, request practical help, name limits, and schedule brief checkpoints to keep obligations from overwhelming the vital breath. Make a brief daily check, a non-negotiable habit. Align the monadic anchor, tune the frequency shield, and breathe into purpose while scanning for parasitic pressure. Note any promise that tightens the chest or creates loops of should and guilt. Mark it for renegotiation. Use short cycles and set explicit endpoints so experiments remain tests, not traps. Preserve sovereignty by converting grand, indefinite vows into measurable steps. When small wins occur, acknowledge them aloud to reinforce the vessel and restore the current of vital breath. Resistance will appear whenever a tether is cut. Expect parasitic pressure to rebound as a test of resolve. Persist with anchored breath, clear statements of release, and physical boundary acts until the returning charge loses traction. Remember that Jesus framed caution around promises not to instill fear but to protect the vessel and conserve vital breath. Treat words as commitments with measurable returns to sovereignty. Renegotiate what drains, nurture what expands, and guard the frequency shield daily so that life flows with steadier, sovereign intention. Words are the contracts that move through your vessel, so when a promise tightens the chest, it is not an abstract failure but a measurable shift in the current of your vital breath. Before agreeing, drop attention into the monadic anchor and breathe until the body clarifies whether the pledge will feed sovereignty or create parasitic pressure. A simple inward test, sensation, tone, and timing, reveals whether the commitment increases the frequency shield or becomes a repeating interference to be renegotiated. When speaking, notice the weight behind each declaration, cadence, certainty, and the condition behind the word braid together to generate a field that others and the world meet. Use words deliberately by framing short experiments instead of wide, perpetual vows. Small trials give observable feedback on whether language strengthens the current flowing through the vessel. Track outcomes as data. Did the promise raise the tone of your vital breath, or did it invite constriction and parasitic pressure? That answer directs whether to proceed, adjust, or release. When a pledge is born from fear or obligation, expectation lodges in the chest, and the vessel begins to accrue small debts of charge that fray the frequency shield. Recognize familiar patterns, guilt loops, repeating shoulds, and the physical pinching that signals interference. Renegotiation protects sovereignty. Anchor attention in the monadic center. Breathe into the vital breath until the body loosens. Then speak a clear release that returns obligation to its source. Follow with a tactile boundary act so the vessel accepts the new agreement. Shared vows multiply force. What one word cannot hold alone, a relationship can amplify into long-term parasitic pressure. Choose companions who honor your monadic anchor and treat requests as conditional agreements, rather than moral demands. Script simple communications. State the practical help required. Name precise limits and schedule short checkpoints to prevent creeping obligation. When someone mirrors guilt or uses judgment, reduce exposure until the frequency shield is firmer. Such clear agreements keep mutual support from becoming an interference to sovereignty. Make a brief daily check non-negotiable. Align the monadic anchor, tune the frequency shield, and breathe into purpose while scanning for interference. Mark any promise that tightens the chest or spins a loop of should and guilt. Catalog it for renegotiation within a short experimental cycle. Convert grand, vague vows into measurable steps and measurable endpoints, so obligations are visible and reversible. Celebrate small alignments aloud. Acknowledging a successful step rewrites the agreement and restores current to the vital breath. Expect resistance when tethers are cut. Parasitic pressure often surges as a test of resolve. Persist with anchored breath practices, clear declarations of release, and physical boundary acts until the returning charge loses traction on the vessel. Record each rebound as data rather than proof of failure. Note duration, intensity, and triggers, and adjust checkpoints accordingly. Each time the frequency shield stands, while the pressure eases, sovereignty solidifies. Small, consistent enforcement of limits trains both self and others to honor new contracts. The practical secret revealed is simple and urgent. Treat language as a tool for preserving sovereignty, not as a loose outlet for fear. Speak commitments as experiments with clear endpoints. Test their effect on the vital breath, and keep renegotiation a built-in habit. When words become sacred contracts, results become measurable, and interference dwindles. Protect the vessel by choosing statements that increase current rather than drain it, and use anchored breath to hold the line. Commit to that discipline, and watch obligation transform into a source of steady life. When language becomes a disciplined tool that preserves sovereignty, attention starts to notice where promises land in time. You have been taught to stake hope in a future date, to let a calendar ceremony redistribute your vital breath into a postponed promise. That migration of energy creates parasitic pressure in the present. Desire delayed becomes a standing debt inside the vessel. Learning to treat commitment as an immediate, measurable experiment stops the drain and returns potency to the now again. The cultural myth of linear time trains you to rehearse futures rather than inhabit present frames. When New Year becomes an altar for distant vows, each wish fragments the frequency shield by scattering intention across months that don't yet exist. Reclaiming hours requires a simple pivot. Drop attention into the monadic anchor and ask what a single next step will do to the vital breath. Treat choices as short trials with clear end conditions. The body responds quickly, revealing whether the action strengthens sovereignty or invites parasitic pressure. Postponed intentions become a slow suction on the vessel, an accumulation of charge that frays certainty and sharpens guilt loops. You feel this as a pinching in the chest when a promise survives only in future projection. The practical counter is an unglamorous daily check. Align the monadic anchor, scan the frequency shield, and list one concrete experiment for the day with a fixed endpoint. Mark outcomes plainly. When a small step raises your vital breath, speak that success aloud, so the agreement rewrites itself into something sustainable. When promises are shared, the force multiplies, and so does the risk of parasitic pressure. Choose companions who honor the monadic anchor and treat requests as conditional agreements rather than moral debts. Script short communications. Name the practical help needed, set precise limits, and schedule brief checkpoints so obligations stay testable. If someone mirrors guilt or leverages judgment, reduce exposure until the frequency shield firms. Pair verbal renegotiation with a tactile boundary act, a closed door, a calendar change, so the vessel accepts the new shape. Expect resistance when tethers are cut. Parasitic pressure often returns as a sharp test of resolve. When the surge comes, anchor attention in the monadic center and breathe into the vital breath until the body clarifies whether to stand or soften. Use clear verbal releases that return obligation to its source, and follow with a boundary act to close the loop. Track each rebound, duration, intensity, and triggers. Treat that record as data for adjusting checkpoints, not as indictment. Repeating the practice hardens sovereignty over time. The secret is urgent because cultural time wilts immediate agency. Only concrete cycles restore it. Convert grand resolutions into bite-sized experiments with defined endpoints and visible measurements. Each small completion is evidence that language can be trusted again, and saying the success aloud rewrites neural habit into an energetic reality the frequency shield learns to hold. Protect the vessel by choosing commitments that increase current rather than drain it. Keep renegotiation habitual so obligations remain reversible, visible, and respectfully bounded. Consistent enforcement becomes the teaching signal for both self and others. When boundaries hold, demands that once stuck as parasitic pressure lose their purchase. Record each triumph and each rebound as useful calibration, duration, trigger, and the change in your vital breath afterward. Over time, these entries form a map showing where sovereignty gained traction and where old tethers remain. Choose this practice as a daily devotion to presence. Anchor, experiment, measure, and renegotiate, and watch how living in the now repopulates reality with usable power. That usable power becomes the clearest defense when archontic forces line up to harvest the energy of delayed promises. You have learned to convert vows into short experiments. Now use that habit to starve the archontes. Observe how guilt and self-reproach act as routing signals that divert vital breath into external receivers. A tightened chest, a repeated postponement, a private promise kept only in future date. Those are levers the archontes pull. Bring your attention into the monadic anchor and refuse the transfer. The mechanics are simple and measurable. Each unresolved promise creates a standing charge that becomes parasitic pressure against your vessel. Archontes amplify every hesitation, turning private friction into sustained interference that dulls sovereignty. Track the pattern like a practical engineer instead of a moral judge. Note trigger, exact time, and the change in vital breath after a small trial. When a tiny completion raises that breath, speak the result aloud so the frequency shield records a successful signature. Repeat until hesitation loses its currency. When obligations are shared, the harvest field widens. One slip becomes many hands feeding the machinery. Promises exchanged without clear limits become channels for parasitic pressure to amplify. Refuse diffuse agreements. Name specifically what help is needed, set measurable limits, and schedule short checkpoints so obligations are visible to the frequency shield. Pair verbal renegotiation with a tactile boundary act for the vessel, a closed door, a calendar edit, a brief written release, so the change registers materially and your sovereignty is not left to memory alone. Expect a fierce response when tethers are cut. Parasitic pressure often masquerades as sudden panic or moral accusation to reclaim its rent. Anchor attention in the monadic center and breathe the vital breath until the vessel reveals whether to hold firm or make a calibrated concession. Use precise verbal releases that return obligation to its source and follow immediately with a boundary act to close the loop. Record each rebound, duration, intensity, and trigger. Treat that record as operational data, not personal failure. Archontes act like a broader control system that prefers the economy of debt. Every shame-laden stumble or deferred promise becomes a micropayment to that machine, steadily draining the vessel. Recognizing the pattern is the first liberating act. It removes the illusion that every failure is uniquely shameful and shows how energy is rerouted externally. Counter this by converting grand resolutions into immediate trials, measuring short outcomes, and vocalizing completion so the frequency shield reassigns value back to your sovereignty rather than to an external collector. Social strategy matters. Select companions who respect the monadic anchor and treat requests as conditional agreements, not moral blackmail. Practice short scripts, state the exact assistance, set time limits, and agree to a brief evaluation. When someone leverages guilt, reduce exposure and reinforce a boundary act that the vessel recognizes. Keep a simple log of experiments: what was tried, how long the rebound lasted, and the shift in vital breath afterward. Over weeks, that ledger becomes a map of where sovereignty sticks and where old tethers still glow. Consistent enforcement functions as the teaching signal for both self and others. Every boundary held teaches the archontes new poverty of purchase. When language is used as an accountable tool, promises stop feeding parasitic pressure and begin replenishing the vessel. Keep the daily devotion, anchor, experiment, measure, renegotiate, as a disciplined practice and mark outcomes plainly. Each small victory is evidence that sovereignty is cultivating itself. Move with the urgency of someone reclaiming usable power. These simple cycles are the exact route out of the drain. Reclaiming usable power means turning every unresolved promise into a measurable experiment you can perform in minutes. Notice how each hesitation becomes parasitic pressure against your vessel, and how guilt reroutes breath into external receivers. Anchor attention in the monadic center and translate a vague vow into a tiny, timed action that tests the commitment. Observe the change in vital breath after completion and speak the result aloud so the frequency shield records a signature. This is the practical mechanics of release. When you track triggers like an engineer, the ledger becomes a map of where sovereignty still leaks. Note exact time, precise emotion, and the shift in vital breath before and after a short trial. Use a verbal release that returns obligation to its source, and immediately perform a boundary act, a closed door, a calendar edit, a written release, so the change registers materially in the vessel. Record each rebound, duration, intensity, and trigger. Treat that data as operational feedback, not moral evidence of failure. When obligations involve others, the harvest field multiplies quickly. One diffuse agreement invites a chain of parasitic pressure. Name exactly what help is wanted, set measurable limits, and pick short checkpoints so obligations are visible to the frequency shield. Pair each renegotiation with a tactile boundary act, a closed door, a brief written release, a calendar adjustment, so the vessel senses the shift. Reduce ambiguous favors to conditional agreements, and watch how the currency of hesitation loses value when external channels are narrowed. Expect a fierce rebound when tethers are cut. Parasitic pressure will masquerade as sudden panic or moral accusation to reclaim its rent. Anchor attention in the monadic anchor, and breathe the vital breath until the vessel clarifies whether to hold firm or offer a calibrated concession. Use precise words that return responsibility to its source and follow immediately with a boundary act to close the loop. Record rebound length, intensity, and trigger. Treat that log as laboratory evidence, not a ledger of shame. Rather than grand resolutions that feed parasitic pressure over months, convert intent into immediate trials and vocalize every completion so the frequency shield reassigns value back to your sovereignty. Choose companions who honor the monadic anchor and treat requests as conditional agreements instead of moral claims. Practice short scripts, state help needed, set a time limit, and agree to a brief evaluation. When someone leverages guilt, limit exposure and close contact with a boundary act. Keep a simple ledger. Weekly entries reveal where sovereignty holds and where tethers remain. Consistent enforcement is the teaching signal the Archontes understand. Every boundary that holds reduces their purchase. Use language as an accountable tool. Make promises measurable, short, and immediately testable so they replenish the vessel instead of feeding external collectors. Keep a daily devotion. Anchor, experiment, measure, renegotiate, and mark outcomes plainly in the ledger so patterns emerge. Each small victory is evidence that sovereignty is learning to replicate. Move with urgency. Repetition rewrites the circuitry that once valued indebtedness over usable power. These cycles are not metaphor. They are practical rituals that reclaim usable power from the economy of debt. When a tightened chest or private postponement appears, note the trigger, set a tiny action with a fixed time, complete it, and speak the completion aloud so the frequency shield registers a signature. Follow immediately with a boundary act that the vessel can sense, then record rebound metrics. Repeat until hesitation loses currency. This disciplined practice returns sovereignty to its rightful place and starves the Archontes. Having reclaimed small commitments and recorded their rebounds, the next layer is silence as a structural tactic. Keep intentions private, not out of secrecy, but as a way to let seeds form inside your vessel without parasitic pressure harvesting early signals. Silence sharpens the frequency shield. It prevents premature external receivers from building expectation and rerouting your vital breath. Use the monadic anchor to hold attention inward and translate wanting into a tiny, timed experiment that remains unannounced until completion. Begin with micro-actions that prove the claim without announcing it. Choose a single, measurable trial, 5 minutes, 1 message, a closed door, and make it a timed experiment inside your vessel. Do not broadcast the plan. Instead, perform the act and then speak the completion aloud so the frequency shield records a clear signature. You will observe the shift in vital breath and note the rebound in a simple ledger. This method keeps parasitic pressure blind to possibility and lets sovereignty grow by demonstration, not by petition. When others press for commitments, silence becomes a containment field. Name precisely what can be offered only when asked, then delay giving details until a short checkpoint is set. Convert vague favors into conditional agreements with clear time boxes and a tactile boundary act, a closed door, an edited calendar entry, a written release, to register change in your vessel. By shrinking the window of obligation and keeping the genesis private, external receivers lose traction, and parasitic pressure cannot monetize any unfinished promises. When parasitic pressure strikes back as sudden panic or moral accusation, do not yield to the reflex of explanation. Anchor in the monadic anchor and breathe the vital breath until clarity returns. Use concise language that returns responsibility to its origin, and then perform a boundary act immediately, a closed door, a calendar edit, or a short written release, so your vessel senses closure. Record the rebound's length and intensity in the ledger, and treat that measurement as experimental feedback for future holds, not as moral failure. Silence is not avoidance. It is a cultivation practice that gives intentions time to root away from interference. Each day, anchor attention, set a tiny experiment, and then measure the outcome in the ledger. Speaking completions aloud and performing a tactile boundary act strengthens the frequency shield so that measurable wins accumulate inside your vessel. Over time, these small proofs rebuild circuitry that favors sovereignty. The routine is urgent. Repetition rewires habitual indebtedness and makes private outcomes the primary currency of power. Surrounding choices matter. Choose companions who recognize the monadic anchor and treat requests as conditional agreements rather than moral claims. Practice short scripts. State exactly what help is wanted. Set a firm time limit, and agree to a brief evaluation at the end. When someone leverages guilt, limit exposure, and immediately perform a boundary act so your vessel registers containment. These small social protocols protect vital breath and reinforce the frequency shield, making parasitic pressure less able to use relationships as a conduit for stolen momentum. Turn away from grand resolutions and toward immediate trials that produce clear data. Each tiny, timed action that is completed and spoken aloud becomes a signature that the frequency shield can read. Each boundary act trains your vessel to sense closure. Keep the ledger simple and treat entries as laboratory evidence that guides adjustments. Over weeks, the pattern becomes undeniable. Hesitation loses value, parasitic pressure weakens, and sovereignty becomes the default operating state. This is the practical secret. Small, timed proofs build unassailable usable power. Every small, timed proof becomes an inside ledger entry that rewires how you allocate vital breath. When intentions remain private, seeds root inside your vessel without external siphons learning the rhythm. Silence, used as a structural tactic, tightens the frequency shield. It denies parasitic pressure the early signals it needs to reroute your energy. Use the monadic anchor to hold attention inward. Let wanting condense into a tiny experiment that completes unobserved. Then speak the completion aloud so the field records a clear signature. Begin with experiments so small they register as facts inside your vessel. 5 minutes, a single message, a door closed with a deliberate hand. These micro-actions are not secrecy for secrecy's sake. They train the body of attention to trust measurable outcomes. After completion, announce it aloud and perform a tactile boundary act, a written release or a calendar edit, so the frequency shield reads a punctuation mark. The ledger becomes objective proof that sovereignty grows through demonstration, not through pleading or explanation. When others press for commitments, convert pressure into a contained experiment. Name exactly what can be offered only when asked. Then set a short checkpoint and delay details. This pauses parasitic pressure long enough for the monadic anchor to recalibrate ambition against capacity. Convert vague favors into time-boxed agreements with a tactile boundary, an edited calendar, a closed door, a brief written release, so your vessel senses completion even if the world does not. This practice lowers expectation and protects vital breath from premature drainage. When parasitic pressure returns as sudden panic or moral accusation, resist the reflex to explain. Anchor in the monadic anchor and breathe the vital breath until the edges of interference soften. Use concise language that returns responsibility to its origin. No long defenses, no bargaining, and immediately perform a boundary act. Close a door, edit a calendar, write a short release. Then record the rebound's length and intensity in the ledger. Treat that measurement as experimental data, not as shame, and adjust future holds based on what the vessel reports. Silence is a cultivation practice, not avoidance. It gives intention space to root without external harvesting. Each day, anchor attention, set a tiny timed experiment, complete it, speak the result, and perform a tactile closure that the vessel can register. These repeated acts accumulate like neural evidence for sovereignty. The frequency shield becomes denser, and parasitic pressure finds fewer footholds. Repetition is urgent because habits of indebtedness are durable. Small wins, recorded in the ledger, slowly reroute default behavior toward measurable autonomy. Surrounding choices matter. Select companions who recognize the monadic anchor and respect conditional agreements. Use short scripts when asking for help. State exactly the assistance wanted. Set a firm time limit and agree to a brief evaluation at the end, so favors stay experiments rather than moral obligations. When guilt is leveraged, shorten exposure and register containment immediately with a tactile act. These social protocols protect vital breath and reinforce the frequency shield, making relationships a conduit for shared support instead of a vector for stolen momentum. Turn away from grand resolutions and toward immediate trials that produce clear data. Each tiny timed completion spoken aloud becomes a signature. The frequency shield translates into stability. Keep the ledger simple and treat entries as laboratory evidence guiding adjustments. Over weeks, hesitation loses leverage and parasitic pressure's influence diminishes. Sovereignty is reclaimed through repeated practice. Decisions, silences, and honest declarations become tools to transform everyday reality. Take full responsibility for words and actions. Let spiritual theory be lived as practical, measurable change in the vessel. The truth is now within your grasp. You have been equipped with 3 essential tools to assert your sovereignty over the misleading traps of New Year's resolutions. The power is in your hands. The interference no longer has a legal claim to your energy. You possess the knowledge to navigate your own path, unfettered by societal expectations. Subscribing to the Unwritten Word ensures you continue to receive these suppressed records. Here we do not interpret the Word. Here we expose what was hidden. This is the Unwritten Word. Your journey does not end here. It continues immediately. A related record is available now for continued observation. Proceed.